The sky above Seoul turned dark at exactly noon. It was not clouds. It was not an eclipse. It was something far worse. Park Tae-ho stood on the observation deck of Earth's Space Command Center and watched as thousands of alien ships blocked out the sun. He had served in the military for 30 years. He had seen wars and disasters, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission," said his assistant, a young officer named Han Yuri. Her hands were shaking as she pressed the buttons on her console. "It is coming from the largest ship. Put it on screen," Park said. His voice was calm, but his heart was pounding. The screen flickered to life. A creature appeared. It was tall, perhaps 3 meters in height. Its skin was gray and covered in thick scales. Its eyes were black and empty, like holes in space. When it spoke, its voice was deep and cold. "I am Supreme Commander Dral of the Vorath Empire. We ruled 12 star systems. We have conquered 47 species. Today, we claim your world." Park felt his blood turn cold. He had always believed that if aliens existed, they would come in peace. He was wrong. Dral continued speaking. "You have 1 rotation of your planet to surrender. Give us your resources. Give us your people as workers. Refuse, and we will show you what happens to species that resist." The transmission ended. The room was silent. Nobody knew what to say. Within hours, the leaders of Earth gathered for an emergency meeting. President Kim Yuna, the first female president of the United Terran Federation, listened to her advisors argue. Some wanted to fight, others wanted to surrender. The decision fell on her shoulders. "We cannot fight them," said one advisor. "Look at their fleet. We have less than 50 ships. They have thousands. But we cannot surrender our people to slavery," said another. President Kim raised her hand, and the room fell silent. "We will try diplomacy first. We will send our best negotiator to their ship. We will talk." Admiral Park stepped forward. "Madam President, with respect, these creatures do not want to talk. They want to conquer. We must try," she said. Her voice was tired but firm. "I will not start a war without trying every other option first." Ambassador Lee Jinwoo was chosen for the mission. He was a kind man in his 50s. He had spent his life building bridges between nations. Now, he would try to build a bridge between species. Park watched as Lee's shuttle flew toward the massive Vorath flagship. He had a bad feeling in his stomach. Something was wrong. He could feel it. "Admiral," Han Yuri said quietly, "I am detecting a broadcast signal. The Vorath are transmitting something to the entire galaxy." Park's eyes went wide. "What are they transmitting?" Before she could answer, every screen on Earth flickered. Every phone, every television, every computer showed the same image. Ambassador Lee stood in the middle of a large chamber, surrounded by Vorath soldiers. Dral's voice echoed across the world. "Humans of Earth, watch carefully. This is what happens to those who try to negotiate with the Vorath Empire." A soldier stepped forward. In one swift motion, he cut Ambassador Lee down. The kind man who had spent his life seeking peace fell to the ground and did not move again. Park heard screams around him. Officers were crying, some were vomiting, but he could not look away from the screen. Dral was not finished. "Your colony world. The one you call Kepler 442b. 10 billion of your kind live there. Watch now. Watch what we do to those who do not surrender fast enough." The image changed. Park saw the beautiful blue and green planet where his daughter lived. Sua was only 25 years old. She was a teacher at a school for young children. She had called him just last week, telling him about a boy in her class who had learned to read. The Vorath ships surrounded the colony world. They did not fire weapons. They fired something worse. Nuclear bombs, hundreds of them, rained down on the planet. The atmosphere caught fire. The oceans boiled. Cities turned to ash in seconds. The broadcast showed everything. It showed people running. It showed mothers holding their children. It showed the exact moment when 10 billion human beings died in fire and pain. The Vorath laughed. Their terrible, cold laughter filled every speaker on Earth. Park stood frozen. His daughter was gone. 10 billion people were gone. And the monsters who did it were laughing. The broadcast lasted 47 minutes. 47 minutes of death. 47 minutes of suffering. 47 minutes of alien laughter. When it finally ended, Earth was silent. The whole world was silent. President Kim collapsed in her chair. Her face was white as paper. Tears ran down her cheeks. But she made no sound. Park looked around the command center. He saw broken people everywhere. He saw fear. He saw despair. He saw defeat. But something else was growing inside him. Something hot and dark. It started in his chest and spread through his entire body. It burned away his grief. It burned away his fear. It left only one thing behind: rage. He walked to the center of the room. His boots echoed on the floor. Every eye turned to him. "Listen to me," he said. His voice was quiet. But everyone heard him. "They think they have broken us. They think we will surrender now. They think we will crawl to them and beg for mercy." He paused. His hands closed into fists. "They are wrong." President Kim looked up at him. Her eyes were empty. "What can we do? You saw their fleet. You saw what they did. What can we possibly do?" Park met her eyes. "We can fight. We can show them what happens when you hurt humanity." "How?" someone asked. Park turned to face the screens that still showed the burning remains of their colony world. "We have weapons. Weapons we swore never to use. Weapons so terrible that we locked them away and promised ourselves we would never touch them again." He thought of his daughter. He thought of her smile. He thought of the children in her classroom who would never grow up. "Wake the sleeping dragon," he said. Nobody asked what he meant. They all knew. Deep beneath the mountains of every nation, there were secrets. Dark secrets. Weapons designed to destroy worlds. Weapons humanity had created in its darkest hours, and then hidden away in shame. The Vorath had killed 10 billion people and broadcast it for entertainment. Now, humanity would show them what true monsters looked like. The age of human mercy was over. The age of vengeance had begun. Earth went dark. Every satellite was turned off. Every radio signal was silenced. Every communication with the outside galaxy was cut. The Vorath Empire watched and waited for the humans to surrender. They waited for the begging to begin. They waited for 3 days. Nothing came. Supreme Commander Draal sat on his throne aboard the flagship and laughed with his officers. "The humans are broken," he said. "They are probably fighting among themselves now. These primitive species always do. Give them a few more days, and they will come crawling to us." His officers laughed with him. They had seen this happen 47 times before. Every species reacted the same way. First came shock. Then came fear. Then came surrender. But on Earth, something very different was happening. Admiral Park Tae-ho stood before the United Council of Nations. Every leader on Earth was present. For the first time in human history, there were no arguments. There were no disagreements. There was only cold, unified purpose. "We have 72 hours before the Vorath attack Earth," Park said. "We cannot defend against their full fleet with our current weapons. But we do not need to defend. We need to attack." A general from Europe raised his hand. "Attack? With what?" "We have 47 ships. They have over 3,000. Park nodded. "That is why I am asking permission to activate Project Prometheus." The room went silent. Everyone knew about Project Prometheus. It was humanity's darkest secret. 20 years ago, a team of scientists had discovered how to create artificial black holes. The weapons they designed could collapse space itself. A single missile could destroy hundreds of ships in 1 second. The weapons were so terrible that every nation had agreed to lock them away forever. They were never supposed to be used. President Kim Yuna stood up slowly. The color had returned to her face, but her eyes were different now. They were hard and cold like steel. "I am giving you full authority, Admiral Park. Wake the dragon. Wake everything. Park bowed his head. I will need Dr. Choi Hana. Everyone knew that name too. Dr. Choi was the scientist who had created Project Prometheus. She was 80 years old now. Living alone, in a small house in the mountains, she had spent the last 20 years trying to forget the weapons she had built. Park flew to her home himself. He found her sitting in a garden, surrounded by flowers. Her hair was white, and her hands were wrinkled. But her eyes were sharp and clear. I know why you are here, she said before he could speak. I watched the broadcast. I saw what they did. Then you know what I am asking, Park said. Dr. Choi was quiet for a long moment. A butterfly landed on her finger. She watched it with sad eyes. I built those weapons hoping they would never be used. I wanted them to be a warning, a reminder of what we could become if we lost our humanity. They killed 10 billion people, Park said. His voice cracked. They killed my daughter. Dr. Choi looked at him. A tear rolled down her wrinkled cheek. I know. I am sorry. She stood up slowly. The butterfly flew away. Take me to my laboratory. I will give you your weapons. And may God forgive us all for what we are about to do. Within 12 hours, Dr. Choi had reactivated Project Prometheus. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, rows of black missiles hummed with terrible energy. Each one contained a small piece of hell itself. But Park needed more than weapons. He needed soldiers. He needed warriors who were not afraid to die. He found them everywhere. Volunteers came from every country. Millions of people signed up to fight, young and old, men and women, rich and poor. They came because they had lost family on Kepler 442b. They came because they had seen the broadcast. They came because they were human, and humans do not forget. Park built his war council carefully. General Baek Sung-ho would command the ground forces. He was a quiet man, with gray hair and steady hands. He had fought in 3 wars and never lost a battle. Commander Yoon Nari would lead the naval fleet. She was 40 years old, with sharp eyes and a brilliant mind. Her son served on one of the warships. She knew she might be sending him to his death. Colonel Kang Dae-won would handle special operations. He was a ghost. Nobody knew his real face. Nobody knew his real history. They only knew that he was the most dangerous soldier alive. Together, they created Operation Alien Extinction. It was not a defense plan. It was not a rescue mission. It was a blueprint for the complete destruction of the Vorath Empire. We will not stop at protecting Earth, Park told his council. We will chase them to their homeworld. We will burn their cities. We will destroy their fleet. We will make sure that no species ever thinks about attacking humanity again. Commander Yoon raised a concern. Sir, if we do this, we become what they are. We become conquerors. We become monsters. Park was silent for a moment. He thought about his daughter again. He thought about her gentle smile and her kind heart. What would she think of him now? They made us this way, he finally said. They chose to show the galaxy no mercy. Now, the galaxy will learn what happens when you push humans past the breaking point. On the 3rd day, the Vorath sent a message demanding immediate surrender. Earth sent back a single image. The flag of the United Terran Federation, with 10 billion stars added to its design, 1 star for every soul lost on Kepler 442b. The Vorath did not understand the message. They thought humans were being foolish. They thought the small fleet waiting at the edge of the solar system was a joke. Supreme Commander Dral ordered his full fleet to advance. 3,000 warships moved toward Earth, like a wave of death. Let them come, Park said, watching the enemy approach. Let them think they have already won. Dr. Choi stood beside him. In her hand was the activation device for Project Prometheus. Her finger hovered over the button. You wanted monsters, she whispered to no one. We will show you what real monsters look like. The storm was coming, and Earth was ready to unleash hell. Commander Yoon Nari stood on the bridge of the warship Vengeance. Through the massive windows, she could see the enemy fleet approaching. 3,000 Vorath ships filled the darkness of space like a swarm of metal insects. Behind her stood just 47 human vessels. It was not a fair fight. But Yoon was not interested in fair. "All ships, hold position," she said into her communicator. Her voice was calm and steady. "Do not fire until I give the order." On the Vorath flagship, Supreme Commander Drawl watched the tiny human fleet with amusement. He turned to his officers and laughed. "Look at them. 47 ships against 3,000. They are either very brave or very stupid. Probably both," one of his officers said. "These humans do not know when to give up." "Let us teach them," Drawl said. "Open fire. Destroy them all." The Vorath fleet began to charge their weapons. Massive cannons aimed at the small human ships. In seconds, the battle would be over. At least, that is what the Vorath believed. Yoon watched the enemy fleet prepare to fire. She felt no fear. She felt only cold determination. Her finger rested on a single button on her console, the button that would launch humanity's first Prometheus missile. "Admiral Park," she said through her private channel. "They are in position." Park's voice came back immediately. "Fire." Yoon pressed the button. A single missile shot out from the Vengeance. It was small and black, no bigger than a person. The Vorath detected it immediately, but they did not bother to shoot it down. What could one tiny missile do against 3,000 ships? The missile reached the center of the enemy formation. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the universe screamed. The black hole that formed was tiny, smaller than a grain of sand. But its hunger was infinite. It pulled everything toward itself with impossible force. Ships that were kilometers away were suddenly dragged into its center. Metal bent and twisted. Hulls collapsed like paper. Vorath soldiers did not even have time to scream before they were crushed into nothing. 400 ships vanished in 2 seconds. They did not explode. They did not burn. They simply stopped existing, pulled into a point smaller than an atom. Then the black hole collapsed on itself and disappeared, leaving only empty space where 400 warships had been. On the Vengeance, Yoon watched her display. 1 missile. 400 kills. She allowed herself a small smile. On the Vorath flagship, there was only silence. Drawl stared at his screen with wide eyes. His mouth hung open. He could not process what he had just seen. 1/3 of his advance fleet had been erased in seconds. What was that?" he whispered. Nobody answered him. Nobody knew. "Fire everything," Drawl screamed, his composure completely broken. "Kill them all! Now!" The Vorath ships opened fire. Thousands of plasma bolts flew toward the human fleet. But the humans were already moving. Their ships danced between the enemy fire with speed and grace that should have been impossible. Lieutenant Han Yuri flew her fighter at the front of the formation. She was only 23 years old, but her hands on the controls were steady. She had lost her entire family on Kepler 442b, her parents, her brothers, her grandmother who used to tell her stories before bed. They were all gone now. All she had left was rage. "First Squadron, follow me," she commanded. "We are going straight down their throats." Her squadron dove into the Vorath formation. They were faster and more agile than the heavy alien ships. While the big vessels fired Prometheus missiles, the fighters picked off enemy ships one by one. Yuri destroyed 17 ships in the first hour. After each kill, she whispered a name. The names of her family. The names of friends. The names of neighbors she had known since childhood. "That one was for Mom," she said as another Vorath cruiser exploded. "And that one was for Dad." The battle raged for 9 hours. The humans fired 12 Prometheus missiles in total. Each one devoured hundreds of enemy ships. The fighters and cruisers handled the rest. When the smoke cleared, not a single Vorath ship remained in the Sol system. Not one. Earth had lost 31 of its 47 ships. Over 4,000 brave men and women had given their lives, but they had killed 3,000 enemy vessels and nearly 2 million Vorath soldiers. Supreme Commander Drawl escaped. In the chaos of battle, he managed to retreat to his personal shuttle and flee toward Vorath space. He ran like the coward he was, but Colonel Kang Dae-won had planned for this. During the battle, his Special Forces team had infiltrated several Vorath ships that were captured instead of destroyed. When Draal fled, Kang's people followed. It took 3 weeks for Draal to reach Vorath Prime, the capital of the Empire. He rushed to the High Council to warn them about the human weapons. He burst through the doors of the council chamber, ready to deliver his desperate message. Colonel Kang was waiting for him. The ghost soldier stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the bodies of Vorath guards. His face was hidden behind a black mask. His weapons were covered in alien blood. "Hello, Supreme Commander," Kang said quietly. "You ran very fast, but not fast enough." Draal tried to run, but Kang was faster. In seconds, the mighty conqueror who had killed 10 billion humans was on his knees, hands bound behind his back. "You will not kill me," Draal said, his voice shaking. "I am valuable. I have information." Kang laughed behind his mask. "Kill you? No. That would be too easy." He activated a device on his wrist. "Admiral Park has a message for your empire." Every screen on Vorath Prime flickered. Every communication device in all 12 systems of the Vorath Empire showed the same image. Supreme Commander Draal, conqueror of 47 species, kneeling before a human soldier like a captured animal. Admiral Park's voice echoed across the stars. "People of the Vorath Empire, you showed humanity no mercy. You killed 10 billion of our people and broadcast it for entertainment. Now watch. Watch what happens to your heroes." Kang dragged Draal before the camera. The mighty commander was crying now, begging for his life. "We are coming for you," Park continued. "Every world, every fleet, every soldier. You started this war thinking we were weak. You were wrong. Pray to whatever gods you have. We will not stop until your empire is ashes." The transmission ended, but its message was clear. Humanity was no longer hiding. Humanity was hunting. 3 years passed. 3 years of war. 3 years of fire and blood. Admiral Park Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, now the flagship of a fleet that had grown from 47 ships to 500. He looked older than his 60 years. His hair had turned completely white. His eyes had lost their warmth. He had become something harder, something colder. "Admiral," Commander Yoon said from beside him, "we have reached Vorath 7. Park nodded slowly. Vorath 7 was the 4th largest world in the enemy empire. 10 million soldiers defended it. Behind those soldiers were factories that built weapons and ships. If they destroyed this world, the Vorath would lose their ability to make new warships. "Begin the assault," Park ordered. The human fleet moved like a perfect machine. After 3 years of constant fighting, every captain knew exactly what to do. Every pilot knew every trick. Every soldier had faced death so many times that they no longer feared it. General Baek Sung-ho led the ground invasion. His troops landed on the planet's surface in thousands of dropships. They fought through cities and factories. They pushed through enemy defenses that should have been impossible to break. The Vorath soldiers fought hard. They were strong and brutal. But they had never faced an enemy like this. The humans did not stop. They did not rest. They did not show mercy. When one soldier fell, 2 more took their place. When one squad was destroyed, 3 more advanced. "Why do they not give up?" a Vorath commander screamed as his troops fell back for the 10th time. "They should be broken by now." His question would never be answered. A moment later, Lieutenant Han Yuri's fighter swept across the battlefield and destroyed his position. Yuri had become the most famous pilot in human history. In 3 years, she had shot down over 400 enemy ships. She had painted 10 billion tiny stars on the side of her fighter, 1 for every person who died on Kepler 442b. She called them her memories. But the war was changing everyone. Even Yuri. "Another kill," she reported as the Vorath commander's building collapsed. Her voice was flat and empty. She did not feel victory anymore. She did not feel anything at all. Commander Yoon noticed the change in the young pilot. She noticed the change in everyone. The war was taking something from them, something important, something human. Yoon had her own losses. Her son, who had served on a cruiser called the Hope, had died in the siege of Vorath 3. The ship had been destroyed, protecting a transport full of refugees. Her son had been a hero. But that did not make the pain any less. "Mom," he had said in his last message, "if I do not come back, please remember that I fought for something important. I fought so no other mother would have to watch her children die like we watched ours." Yoon kept that message saved on her personal device. She listened to it every night before she slept. It was the only thing that kept her going. On Vorath 7, the battle lasted 2 weeks. In the end, the humans won. They always won now. The factories were destroyed. The enemy fleet was scattered. Another piece of the Vorath Empire fell. But with each victory came a question that nobody wanted to answer. How far were they willing to go? Where was the line they would not cross? Dr. Choi Hana had stayed on Earth for most of the war. But she watched every battle. She saw what her weapons did. She saw worlds burned and populations scattered. She saw the destruction she had made possible. One night, she called Admiral Park through a secure channel. Her face was pale and tired. "Taeho," she said. She was one of the few people who still used his first name. "I need to ask you something." "Ask," Park replied. "When will it be enough?" Dr. Choi's voice cracked. "When will we stop? We have destroyed half their empire. We have killed millions of their soldiers. Their power is broken. Is that not enough?" Park was silent for a long moment. Through his window, he could see Vorath 7 burning below. Smoke rose from destroyed cities. The orange glow of fire lit up the night side of the planet. "They showed us no mercy," he finally said. "They laughed while our people died. 10 billion people, Hana. 10 billion. My daughter was one of them." "I know," Dr. Choi said softly. "But revenge will not bring them back. And I am afraid of what we are becoming. I am afraid we are turning into the monsters we wanted to destroy." Park closed his eyes. He knew she was right. He could feel it himself. The darkness inside him had grown so large that sometimes he could not remember what light felt like. "We will stop when they can never hurt anyone again," he said. "When their military is gone. When their empire is ashes. Then we will stop." The call ended. Dr. Choi sat alone in her laboratory, surrounded by the blueprints of weapons that could destroy worlds. She wondered if building them had been a mistake. She wondered if there had been another way. But it was too late for second thoughts. The war machine could not be stopped now. The Vorath Empire, desperate and dying, sent a request to the Galactic Council. The Council was a collection of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They had existed for millions of years. They watched over younger species and settled disputes. They had also watched 10 billion humans die without lifting a finger. "Please," the Vorath ambassador begged. "You must stop them. The humans are destroying everything. They will not listen to reason. They will not accept surrender." The council listened in silence. Then the eldest member, a being older than Earth itself, spoke. "When the humans were attacked, we did nothing. When their colony was destroyed, we called it an internal matter. We allowed this war to begin. We have no right to stop it now." The Vorath ambassador fell to his knees. "Then you are condemning us to extinction." The old being's eyes showed no sympathy. "You condemned yourselves when you broadcast the death of 10 billion innocents for entertainment. The humans have a saying on their world. Perhaps you have heard it." The ambassador looked up with desperate eyes. "Those who live by the sword," the being said slowly, "will die by the sword." The Vorath Empire would receive no help. They were alone against an enemy that would not stop until the last Vorath warship was dust, and the last Vorath soldier was defeated. Humanity marched on, cold, unstoppable, hungry for the final victory. Vorath Prime burned. Admiral Park Taeho stood on the bridge of the Vengeance and watched the enemy homeworld die. Massive fires covered the surface. Cities that had stood for 10,000 years collapsed into rubble. The sky was black with smoke and ash. The final battle had lasted only 3 days. The Vorath had thrown everything they had left into defending their capital. 200 ships, 5 million soldiers, ancient defense systems built over centuries. None of it mattered. The human fleet had cut through them like a knife through paper. After 3 years of war, the humans were no longer the same species that had been attacked. They had become something else. Something harder. Something that the galaxy would remember for a very long time. President Kim Yuna stood beside Park. She had aged 20 years in the last 3. Her hair was gray. Her face was lined with worry, but her eyes were clear and strong. "It is time," she said quietly. "Give the order." Park nodded. He activated the fleet-wide communication. "All ships. This is Admiral Park. Cease fire. I repeat, cease fire." The guns went silent. The bombs stopped falling. For the first time in 3 years, there was peace. But they were not finished yet. Park broadcast a message to the planet below. "People of Vorath Prime, you have 1 hour to evacuate. Take whatever ships you have left. Flee to whatever corners of the galaxy will accept you. In 1 hour, we will make your world uninhabitable." The message was received. Within minutes, hundreds of civilian ships began launching from the surface. Men, women, children, the old and the young, they fled in terror from the planet their ancestors had called home for thousands of years. Supreme Commander Dral watched from his cell aboard the Vengeance. He had been kept alive for 3 years, a prisoner, a trophy, a reminder of what had started this war. Colonel Kang brought him to the bridge. The mighty conqueror was thin now. His scales had lost their shine. His eyes were hollow with defeat. "Why?" Dral asked as he watched his people flee. "Why did you spare them? Why give them a chance to escape?" Park turned to face him. For a long moment, the two commanders just looked at each other. The man who had lost everything. The creature who had taken it. "Because we are not you," Park finally said. "We could kill every last one of your kind. We have the power. But we choose not to. That is what makes us different." Dral laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. "Different? You have destroyed my empire. You have killed millions of my people. You have burned a dozen worlds. How are you any different from us?" Park felt the old rage rise in his chest, the same rage that had driven him for 3 years. But now, standing at the end of everything, he felt something else too. He felt tired, so very tired. "You asked me once what I became to defeat you," Park said. "I will tell you now. I became a monster. You made me into one. Every night, I see the faces of people I have killed. I hear their screams. I know that I will carry this darkness with me until I die." He stepped closer to Dral. His voice dropped to a whisper. "But there is one difference between us. When you killed 10 billion of my people, you laughed. You celebrated. You felt nothing but joy." Park's eyes were hard as stone. "I feel every single death, and I will carry that weight forever. That is the price of being human." Dral had no answer. He simply stood there, broken and defeated, watching his world burn. The hour passed. The civilian ships fled into space, carrying the survivors of a broken empire to uncertain futures. When the last ship had gone, President Kim gave the final order. Dr. Choi Hana was not there to press the button. She had refused to come. But her weapons worked perfectly without her. A single Prometheus missile descended toward Vorath Prime. This one was different from the others. Instead of creating a black hole, it released a poison into the atmosphere. A poison that would make the planet uninhabitable for 10,000 years. The missile hit. A wave of toxic gas spread across the surface. The fires died. The smoke cleared. What was left was a dead world. A gray ball of rock that would never support life again. The Vorath Empire was over. Forever. 1 year later, Admiral Park retired. He had been offered every honor the human race could give him. Statues, medals, a seat on the ruling council. He refused them all. Instead, he moved to a small house on New Kepler, the new colony that humanity had built near the grave of their old one. 10 billion people had died there once. Now, new cities were rising from the ashes. New children were being born. New hope was growing. Park planted a garden. He filled it with flowers. 10 billion flowers, one for every soul that had been lost. He spent his days caring for them, watering them, watching them grow. Sometimes, visitors came. Commander Yoon became the first human ambassador to the Galactic Council. She worked every day to make sure no species would ever suffer what humanity had endured. She visited Park once a month. They would sit in his garden and remember the people they had lost. Dr. Choi destroyed all her research, every blueprint, every formula, every piece of knowledge that could be used to build weapons like Project Prometheus. She burned it all and scattered the ashes in the ocean. Some knowledge is too dangerous to exist, she said, when people asked her why. Let humanity find other ways to protect itself. Let us never become what we were forced to be. Lieutenant Han Yuri never stopped flying. But she no longer flew warships. She became a rescue pilot, saving people from disasters across human space. She still had the stars painted on her fighter, 10 billion of them, she would never forget, but she had found a new way to honor the dead. By saving the living, and Colonel Kang? Nobody knew what happened to him. Some said he had disappeared into the darkness between stars. Others said he was still out there, watching, waiting, making sure humanity would never be caught sleeping again. The galaxy learned a lesson that would be remembered for 10,000 years. Humanity did not seek war. They did not want conquest. They asked only to live in peace among the stars. But those who would attack them, those who would kill their children and laugh about it, would discover what humans became when pushed past the point of mercy. They became extinction. On New Kepler, a memorial was built. It was simple, just a white wall with 10 billion names carved into it. At the bottom was a single sentence in every language humanity had ever spoken. We came in peace. You chose war. May the stars remember what you forced us to become. Admiral Park visited the memorial every year on the anniversary of the attack. He would stand before the wall and find his daughter's name. Park. Sua. Teacher. Beloved daughter. He would touch her name gently. And he would whisper the same words every time. I am sorry for what I became, but I would do it all again. For you. For all of you. Then he would return to his garden, and the flowers would bloom. The end.